Okay, welcome to this short video on quadratics and problem solving. And these are three sort of high-end GCSE questions on this subject. So in the first one, we're dealing with a rocket that is launched, and after t seconds of flight, its speed or velocity is given by this formula. Okay, so we've got to find the time at which its speed reaches 2045 meters per second. So we set up a quadratic equation that looks like this: 20t squared minus 80t plus 320, and that will give us the speed, which is 2045, like that, 2045. Okay, we now tidy that up and we set the right hand side to 0. So we have 20t squared minus 80t. Okay, and then we have minus 1725 equals 0. We could try to factorize it or solve it with the formula at that point, but the next obvious thing to do is divide throughout by 5 to give me 4t squared minus 16t minus 345, okay, equals 0, and solve that instead, because that will be easier to work with. So all we've done is divided both sides by 5, and of course when you divide 0 by 5 you still get 0. Now that does actually factorize, okay? It may not be obvious and you may have to work on it a little bit, but if you couldn't factorize it, it's a calculator question, so you could easily use the quadratic formula. But in fact it factorizes with the numbers 15 and 23. Okay, one of those has to be negative, and it doesn't take much to see that this would have to be the positive and this would have to be the negative. Okay, the product of 15 and 23 is 345, and with the negative it's negative 345. You've got plus 30t on the inner but minus 46t on the outer, which gives you the minus 16t that you want. Now this gives us two solutions. Okay, the first one is that t equals negative 15 over 2, okay, or negative 7.5, and the other one is that t equals 23 over 2, which is a positive number. Okay, 23 over 2, or 11.5. Okay, now we need to eliminate one of them because it's negative, so we can discount this one and accept the second one and conclude that t equals 11.5. That's 23 over 2, 11.5 seconds exactly. Okay, and you would have got the same answer had you used the quadratic formula. Okay, question 2 is concerning this rectangle. Now we could do a little sketch, but it's not particularly difficult to understand what's going on here. Okay, so we've got a rectangle and it looks something like this. Okay, if we just bring that out here, I'll just make it look more like a rectangle than a square. Okay, so we just stretch it out a bit here. And we've got a length and a width. Now we don't know which is which, but unless x was very small, we can assume that the length is the 4x and the width is the x plus 3. Okay, and we know that if we multiply them together, we get the area, which is 187 centimeters squared. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a quadratic that reflects that. So I've got 4x times x plus 3, okay, and that equals 187. If I multiply out the bracket, I get 4x squared plus 12x equals minus 187 equals 0. Let's do that at the same time. Okay, that will save a bit of time. And then we need to either factorize that or use the formula again. And again, this does actually factorize. And as it happens, it also starts with 2x and 2x in this case. Okay, and the 187 is actually 170 plus 17, which is 11 times 17. And they are, in fact, the correct numbers. Okay, and this, now one of these has to be a minus, and we get 2x times 17 is 34x. Okay, and 2x times minus 11 is minus 22, and if you combine those you get plus 12. So that is correct. So that gives me that x equals 11 over 2, which is 5.5, or x equals negative 17 over 2. Okay, and that is negative 8.5. So for the same reason as before, it's the positive one we're interested in, okay, because length can't be a negative number. Okay, and the question said, what's the width of the rectangle? Well, we can assume the width is the smaller of the two, so width equals x plus 3, which is 11 over 2, or 5.5 plus 3, which is equal to 8.5 centimeters. And this is where you reintroduce the units of measurement, in this case centimeters. Okay, and that's the correct answer for question 2. And now we come to question 3, which is about completing the square, in fact. So when you have a quadratic curve, to find the minimum value, the best way is to complete the square, and that doesn't take very long at all. So what we do is we look at the x coefficient, which is 6, halve it to get 3, and we say that y equals, it's going to be x plus 3 all squared, okay, and that's going to give us x squared plus 6x plus 9. So we need to take away the 9, okay, and so that bit there that I've just done is the same. So this piece here, from here to here, is exactly the same as this bit up as far as that, okay, but I've also got to take away the minus 23 as well, okay. So I can now say that y equals x plus 3 all squared minus 32. Okay, now we've got to solve the equation that equals 0. But before we solve that, this is where we can write down the minimum point. And the minimum point occurs when this is at its smallest, okay, and the smallest value this bracket can ever be is 0, because when you square something, it's always going to be positive, okay, so the smallest value this thing squared can be is 0, all right, which means that x has to be minus 3 for that to happen, and that happens when that leaves y to be minus 32, if that's 0, you see. So the minimum at minus 3, comma, minus 32. Again, it's a minimum point because it's a quadratic U-shaped curve. Okay, and that's it. So that's how you answer that question, or the first part of it. Now the second part requires us to solve it, And what I'm going to do is set it to 0. So I'm going to say that x plus 3 squared minus 32 equals 0. Okay, now if I add 32 to both sides, x plus 3 all squared equals 32. And then I say x plus 3 without the squared equals plus or minus the square root of 32. Okay, and then finally x equals negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 32. Okay, now you can put that on the calculator at this stage because it asks you for the answers to 3 significant figures. You should also note, of course, that root 32 is root 16 root 2, which is 4 root 2. So we could say here that x equals negative 3 plus or minus 4 root 2, which is how the calculator would present it. Okay, and then we just want the decimal values. Well, if you put that onto the calculator, you get these two values. X equals 2.66 from the positive to 3 significant figures, or x equals negative 8.66. Okay, and they're the solutions that come from that. So I'll just partition this off. So that's question 1. Okay, up to there. Question 2 is, well, in this box here, and the rest of it is question 3. Okay, and that is the end of those 3 problems. Let's just highlight the answers, both to 3 significant figures. Okay, thanks for watching.